Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. This podcast covers the national champions. Still basking. Hope everyone's doing well. A little bit of a late start today. Summer is not smooth in the Rubin household. There's more occupants. The only one that's well behaved is your guy, Brad. And I got to tell you, we got a good show for you today. Going to talk a little bit about recruiting in the South. There's a certain jewel of a recruit Ohio State is hoping to add to the almost finished 2026 class. And then we're also going to discuss where we think the 2026 class might end up, etc., with the knowledge that things are more fluid in recruiting now than they've ever been. And we all know why. We also know that you need quality eyewear if you're going to enjoy the summer. And that's where Gooder comes in. Look at these things. You can see here. I wear Amelia Earhart Ghosted Me. These are fire. They come in these great cases. $25 or less. Only $25 a pair, and we've talked about this, and Dave has too. Those of you who lose their sunglasses, and that means you, because everyone does, this is like the answer to that, because they're cheaper, they're durable, replaceable. You could buy a $250 pair of shades, and you lose them, you are screwed. Gooder, plenty to choose from. You can wear them on a run. You play pickleball now. I don't, but I just found out Dayton is building like one of the largest pickleball facilities in the world. I'm sure we really need that. They're affordable. Like I said, don't have to worry about losing or breaking them. You can have a pair for every occasion. Men, women, children, pets. They do it all. Gooder.com/Bucknuts and use code Bucknuts for free shipping. You'll also get a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you're a Bucknuts Morning 5 listener, go to gooder.com/Bucknuts and use code Bucknuts for that free shipping. All right. I'll tell you who's not free in any way. The Dean and the Grand Poobah, Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter. Gentlemen, Bill, I think it's fair to say we are in the stretch run, and I air quoted that for the class of 2026, though, as I said to start the show, there's some uncharted waters still to go through given the NIL. We're going to start on a purely positive note. July 4th, a tremendous holiday, and we now have more reason to celebrate it every year because it means that was the day Jameer J.J. Perez flipped from Florida to Ohio State. We knew he was going to make an announcement. We didn't know it would be the whole kit and caboodle, as I just cliche it up like an old man, and he would become a Buckeye. Now, to be fair, Mark and Bill have told you for some time that despite his Jerome Baker-esque commitment to Florida, everyone pretty much assumed he'd end up back at Ohio State. He did. Why that went the way it did so far, all's well that ends well. Bill, please tell us how you saw that go down at the end. I guess you weren't surprised, but I would absolutely say we're all thrilled that Perez is a Buckeye and the pipeline continues to produce.
No, not surprised at all. And as you mentioned, as you alluded to, Dan, Mark and I have been saying for quite some time that we thought he was going to eventually flip to Ohio State. And, that's with the Glenville pipeline, with him making that early declaration from Florida for Florida, that was never going to be a shock. And it happened. And I think it happened for more than one reason. I think that, in fact, I know from talking to Jameer and talking to people around Jameer in the Glenville community that, that the people in Glenville would prefer that he end up at Ohio State. Family people, I think overall would prefer that he ended up at Ohio State. I think Jameer would too. So I think, and he said to me that was a factor. People helped him see what was in the best interest of him. He said that Ohio State was in his best interest. So I think that was a factor. And then I think, as all recruitments, when it gets down to the nuts and bolts, and you start talking packages and all that type of thing, Ohio State was able to get themselves where Jameer, felt comfortable with what their package was. And I think, put those things together, and he is a Buckeye now. And I asked him, is your recruitment now over? Are you solid? And he said, yes, it's a solid situation where he is going to Ohio State.
Mark, we've talked about the floppy belly, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. That is not a negative statement about, there's other terms for it. Fire hydrant, if you will, a large one. But Ohio, and you would know this better than anybody, just doesn't produce the number of defensive tackles. It does seem like there's a disproportionate number of them coming from Louisiana. I have nothing to back that up except my cursory review and agonizing with Dwayne over the years. God rest his soul. Your thoughts on Perez, where he fits in? It's surprising is not a good word. There's a lot of chatter on your evaluation about how big he'll get, what his good weight will be, how much does he actually weigh. It seems like when a guy goes over 300, we just feel comfortable talking about his telling him to lose weight or gain weight or whatever. Your thoughts based on what you've seen and what you know about him behind the scenes and the people that know him best, how you think he will thrive and in what spot?
First of all, I think Bill kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a support system at Ohio State for Glenville players. And when you go off to college and you're alone, and there's the farther away you are, there's a percentage of people who don't make it. So, once you see that how strong that support, Bryce West, Sincere Johnson, Arvell Reese, just name a couple guys that'll be there to put their arms around them, and the relationship with Ted Ginn over the years. So it always makes sense when you go home, is what the Glenville people call it. Ohio State is home to them. When they walk around down there, they get to be home. I think J.J. Perez accidentally told people his true weight, and he didn't realize what he was going to stir up when he told people his true weight. So I'm just going to talk while he's playing here. He said he weighed 360, and then immediately he said he was going on a diet. Okay. I saw him at a showcase. I tell you what, if you took the leg off of a hippopotamus and you put it on J.J. Perez, it may not be big enough to match his body. That's how big his lower half is, his legs and torso and butt and everything. And that's what you've bought here. I don't worry about the weight. He's explosive at over 330, 340 pounds. I said this before. You have a tool belt on the defensive line. This kid doesn't need to go 60 snaps a game. He needs to be in there on all the short yardages, the 3rd and 3s, maybe 1st and 2nd down, to maybe tell the offensive coordinator, don't run it because he's in the game, I was looking at Matt Patricia and saying, what kind of players did he use when he was at New England? Vince Wilfork and Alan Branch, two guys that I think 330 would have been light for. I think they were both way over 330. Akeem Hicks was another one. When he was with the Lions, this name tells you all you need to know. Damon Snacks Harrison. Okay, when your name is Snacks, you don't weigh under 350. Ashawn Robinson. And then with the Eagles, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, these guys are monsters. I mean, there's no fear of having a guy 330, 360 pounds in the middle of your defense to serve that purpose. If Patricia is going to run a 3-4, which, he has done, this is your nose tackle. And if you're in the 4-3, it's still your nose, your one technique, maybe playing a little different. You might not have the 2-gap, but Perez is a weapon. He's a positional weapon. He runs in and out of games. I don't think he's ever going to be looked at as this have to play every down guy. And I think there's some people who think, if he got down to 310, he'd be more of an every down player. Big Daddy Wilkinson was an explosive player that probably played 330, maybe 315. He was a bigger guy. And I think this is the type of player you'd like to get if you were that much lighter. Now, when Perez comes in, his body is going to reshape immediately. immediately within 6 months of him being on campus, eating the right meals, having a nutrition. He's going to thicken up with muscle, if you can believe that, and maybe lose some of the, belly. But I don't think he's ever going to be, a thinner guy. I think we don't want him to be. After he's done playing football for health reasons, yes, but for the next 5-10 years, he has one purpose.
They don't necessarily lose the belly. This is a quick digression here, and people love these. I was covering the Washington Redskins at the time. They were hosting the New Orleans Saints. And as Dan Snyder's want to do, the home locker room for the Redskins was spectacular. The road locker room was not. It was very tight. So when they would let the press in there 11 minutes after the game, you'd see guys coming in and out of the shower. I mean, you'd see enough. People will tell you this. You'll see enough naked guys to last you a lifetime. It's just the facts. One time I was walking through there, and it was tight, and you guys remember the name Grady Jackson? He played defensive tackle for the New Orleans Saints, and he and Jameer Perez would shop at the same tailor, let's say, and or go to the same tailor. And as he was in front of me, he abruptly turned, was on his way to the shower, must have decided he needed to go back to his locker, and he bumped into me. He turned fully in sweat. And his stomach was so big, it left a sweat mark on my shirt that looked like I had worked out the exact size of Grady Jackson's stomach. And so he was about 360. So you can survive at that, despite the fact that you tend to perspire on the media. And that shirt definitely was never worn again. Thank you, D. Sanchez. Let's also point out that the Glenville Pipeline, Bryce West, another member of Glenville who's on the team and a corner fighting for playing time, D has said that he's already treating her son beautifully. So if you need to know anything about the kind of guys you're getting at Ohio State, they are already helping guys who could take their spot in the rotation. That is a brotherhood. That is impressive. All right.
Yeah, I got to chime in real quick on Bryce West. He is one of my favorite guys in the recruiting process over the last, 5-10 years, for a lot of reasons. He just always was treated. I think he just treated people in general really well. And I see D. Sanchez talks about how well he has treated her son too. But a lot of times when kids tell you something, they don't always back it up. They're 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. Well, Bryce West told me all along, he would say, I gotcha. I'll let you know. And sure enough, he's on his official visit, and he messages me during that time and says, Mr. Kurelic, I'm doing it right now. And he let me know what's going on. And kids don't always remember that stuff. And he certainly did. And I definitely remember that.
How about this? That Redskins team also had Big Daddy Dan Wilkinson on the team. I think it's his eldest daughter was named Brooklyn. She may or may not have been dating Brian Robisky at Ohio State. She went there. But they grew up in suburban Maryland. Ironically, the first party my eldest nephew ever had, they were there because he went to high school with her. 2:00 in the morning, there was only two people still up, and it may have been Big Daddy's first wife and myself. That's also alleged. It was all above board, good stuff. We digress. And more great stuff about Bryce West on there. Tell you about Ohio State, and we tell you, Dave and I have told you this, and these guys will tell you that, and Bill will tell you this. They're not just recruiting good football players. You'd be really impressed if you hung out with these dudes. I'll tell you this. When I met Carnell Tate, he was 17. He walked away, and I said to Dave, he's more mature than I am. This is really intimidating. They are recruiting complete packages there, man. So more power to them on that. All right. Let's also talk about Luke Fahey. He committed to Ohio State after our show on Thursday, I believe, Bill, if I have my chronology right, working backwards here. Very impressed with Luke Fahey. He looks to be fully grown, as we discussed on his recruiting. evaluation and really impressive. However, I don't think this is an offer or acceptance of an offer of a guy who's just here to have fun. He's here to play, and I would not be surprised if he eventually gets real burn here. Bill, your thoughts on Fahey, his recruitment, his choice of the Buckeyes, and what role you think Ohio State has envisioned for him?
Yeah, he well, first of all, he did announce after that podcast. We did the podcast on Thursday morning. He announced at 3:00, 12 noon his time on Thursday, 3:00 our time here in Central Ohio. I've got to go back to that. We talked about Bryce West and the kind of guys Ohio State's recruiting. Luke Fahey kind of ranks right in there too, at least with me. He kind of talked with me through the last month of his recruitment at Ohio State, and everything he said that he would do, I'll remember this and that, he backed it all up. And at one point I asked him, and I kind of do this sometimes with a lot of kids, I want to make sure when they tell me something, are you okay with me crystal balling you to Ohio State? Because some of them, if they tell you something, they don't want necessarily for you to crystal ball in Ohio State. I like to follow that rule. If they're not okay with it, I'm not going to do it. And he was a kid that, I asked him, "Are you okay with me crystal balling?" He said, "Yeah, go right ahead." And he didn't, and he just thinks like that all the way through the process. He was really, really good. He's another quality guy. And as far as on the field, there's probably the stat that impresses me most is that he's playing against good competition. He's at Mission Viejo High School in California, Mission Viejo, California, playing against good competition. And as a junior, he threw for, I think, close to 2,000 yards, 1,700 and something or whatever. Did not throw an interception all season long. That's impressive.
That was the zero I was holding up, Bill. If you had gone somewhere else with that, I'd have been screwed. All right, Mark, what do you think? I was so impressed. Like, I knew he was going to be good when I went to watch him because of his accolades, but he's a really good quarterback. He's good at playing quarterback, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it's like when you're a great quarterback, you just make it look easy. Like everything just seems to work, and it doesn't look like you're under duress or stress. He flicks the ball for being an undersized quarterback. He's listed at 185, but I got to believe he's more than that by now. And I got to believe he's on his I got to believe he's on his way to 200 pounds by the time he sees the field at Ohio State or more. And then that puts him in a place where you see a lot of these 200-pound quarterbacks that are undersized still can rip the ball. I saw someone wanted to compare him to Baker Mayfield. Not a bad idea. He'd have to really beef up. Baker, I think, is 220, 225. I mean, he's got some baby fat in his face. He's really bulking up so much. So I don't know if he'll ever get there, but don't worry about the arm strength, stuff like that, the poise, the timing. A lot of these are extended handoffs. He throws guys open. He throws guys into space. He understands the coverage when those man-to-man routes hit. And he runs good enough. Like Julian's saying, I said this before, already being on the roster, you have a template for success for this type of kid. And it's just a matter of how closely in those footsteps does he follow. Russell Wilson, Bo Nix. There's a lot of names out there, Drew Brees, where these guys are very comfortable playing behind 6'5" or 6'7" offensive linemen. Their release point is part of it. Where's the ball coming out? Is it coming out high over the shoulder, or this certainly doesn't have a sidearm to lower his release point. Things like that come into play, and he checks all the boxes there.
You're in 2026 when there's a mini controversy about Devin Sanchez not being included in the video game already. As Mark said, come on, man. That's not a hard one. Even the national Phil Seal types are picking up the fact that he's going to be a freshman All-American. And listen, how many more times we need to talk about the guy on here? Get it done. That's a major miss for EA.
I always wonder when they got those rosters, or when did they import them from the football office, and was he signed in time but I thought he was an early signer. Like I thought he was in the mix early, and like that wouldn't make sense. Or I don't know how many people they actually put on your team for a roster, and they might have just got the roster limits. And yeah, I know there's a lot of people playing video games that love to have their team complete, but I'm sure they can create a Sanchez, and there's creative players. But yeah, that was interesting to see. And then it looked like some of the ratings. I know I don't want to digress, but I was interested in that article about the ratings of the Ohio State players.
Yeah, everyone
through someone else's eyes. You always like the Madden ratings, and what do the Madden teams think? And it was so cool when you see those guys now on the sidelines that are like Madden ratings adjuster is the jacket they wear, and they walk around football stadiums and they get hit on by the guys like, hey, you got my speed wrong. Does anyone ever have their speed right, by the way?
I told you this, the best football coach I ever covered in high school would not release his 40 times to the media because he said, we do it accurately, and I'm not having you tell me a 4.7 guy is slow. Because there would be teams that would say, when people do their own stats, you can see something impressive. I used to have one coach who would send in on Sunday mornings way back in the day when you would do roundups of high school stuff. He would send in his stats, and the quarterback would always throw for about 200 yards, and the receivers, he'd have 3 of them go over 100 yards. And I'd be like, something wrong in the math here. Someone's trying to get a scholarship. Speaking of trying to get a good deal, look at this. Brunt Workwear is in the house. Now, you wouldn't think us 3 are workwear types. The whole point is this. Look at this hat. Are you one of those people like me that likes to have a hat that no one else has and wear around? This is it. I don't even know where that is. North Reading, Mass. Brunt Workwear. But this is what they do. Look at these boots, man. Solid, smooth, comfortable. The ultimate work boot made by a guy who was on the job. He knows what he was doing. These boots are the best for durability. Marin work boots built for the toughest job sites, completely waterproof, rain, mud, or standing water. You stay dry. The founder grew up blue collar and started Brunt Workwear after his friends in the trades kept telling him big brands had stopped listening, hadn't changed in 100 years. That's true, by the way. There's some old boot companies that need to mix it up. They'd sold out to become become fashion brands. His buddies encouraged him to start a brand new one, and now you got it. For our limited time now, our listeners get $10 off at Brunt when you use code Bucknuts at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com and use code Bucknuts, and you're good to go. And after you order, they'll ask you where you heard about Brunt. Do us a favor and tell them it was from this show. Like I said, get you a hat. That's a fire hat. My kids have both asked for this. One of the few things I've not given away. And these boots are fire, man. You could wear, some of you guys are fashionable to wear these out with your jeans. Mark, you could pull that off. You're a big dude. Those would look fire on you. Bill, more your high-priced, Italian loafers, but we digress. All right, Bill. 2026. I feel like, the recruiting rules have changed to some extent, the calendar, given the tomfoolery and hijinks that's going on everywhere, but I think they have kind of settled in on who their remaining targets are. So let's hit those. The one everyone is discussing now is Bralan Womack. I believe he's been crystal balled to the Buckeyes, but he's one of the best players in the cycle, and he's technically available down the stretch. So you know what that means, Bill. Anybody who's got some money in the coffers is making a run at Bralan Womack. I've gotten the sense that you felt Bralan Womack would be a Buckeye, arguably the top safety in the country, depending on the ranking you check out. Can you bring us totally up to speed on Bralan, where we stand, how you think it'll end up, and when it will end up?
Well, when is, unless something changes, and sometimes they do. Remember, J.J. Perez was going to wait until August 22nd to announce his final decision, and that is now a final decision in the rearview mirror, so things sometimes change. But as of now, Bralan Womack is still planning to announce his decision on August 22nd. He's made official visits to 4 schools: Ohio State, Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M. And I have continued to like Ohio State's chances with him. But as you know, in this day and age of the NIL and packages and all that kind of stuff, and revenue sharing and whatever else you want to call everything, offers get made and negotiations take place up until the last minute. See Luke Waffle, who changed his mind a couple times in the last 24 hours. So I do continue to like Ohio State's chances with Womack, but I can also tell you that, it's getting down to, put all your chips in the middle time with him, and we'll see what happens there with all the packages that are going to be offered, and negotiations are ongoing. So there is still quite a bit of time between now and August 22nd. So I think as long as Ohio State is right there or reasonably there with their package and all, I like Ohio State's chances.
I think Bill wanted to say Bucknuts crunching time there, but he went with a more above board. Probably got his grandchildren in the room, so he's keeping it elementary school level. Marcus, your thoughts on Womack?
Yeah, this is the one that I didn't. This is an article I have up for another thing, but Womack is the piece that will put you over the top. I mean, when you bring in guys like that, I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. And we're at the cherry on top point in this class. And I know, the Bucknuts people want it to be a top overall class in the country. If you're in the top 10, you're fine with me. You're in the top 5, you haven't done anything wrong. But yeah, to think that this could be the last piece of the puzzle and kind of snug us up against the number, that's a nice way to. And I think when the guys do those rankings, stuff like this at the end sticks in their brain. It's like humans, like, wow, that last piece of the puzzle they put in there was really good. They're not going to remember the guy we got 4 or 5 commitments ago. They remember these last guys. So, yeah, fingers crossed on the NIL.
Couple things to remember. One, they already have a great safety in the class from Baton Rouge named Blaine Bradford. Bill, you can put this in context. I don't think they've ever gotten 2 safeties in one class that good. Am I off kilter there, you think?
I can't recall any right offhand. That's arguably, you could make a case for them being the number 1 and 2 safeties in the country. Yep. I mean, you absolutely could make that case. So yeah, I think that'd be hard pressed. And they've got Simeon Caldwell too, for that matter, who might end up as a linebacker, might end up as a safety, might be a hybrid guy. We'll see. But whatever he ends up at, he's really good.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, it doesn't hurt. Once again, thank you, Nick Saban. It does not hurt to have Caleb, like everywhere. I talked about this with Dave yesterday. Very rare there's consensus in football about players. You will not find anyone who will tell you there's a better offensive player than Jeremiah Smith or defensive player than Caleb Downs going into this season. That's very, very rare. It's rare to have the guys who are actually the best. And I think it's even more rare to see there be just total consensus. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one will argue that with you. Even people who are, have blue poison in their bloodstream. All right, let's hit rapid fire here on some names. Mark, I'm going to go to Bill for these. And if you want to hop in, we can do that. And then we'll finish off at the end with maybe some of this Madden chatter. Bill, I'm going to go rapid fire here. First name, and if you could just tell everyone a quick refresher on who they are, what their deal is, and whether or not you expect them to end up at Ohio State. Excuse me. That'd be great. The first, KJ Ford.
Yeah, he is a defensive end edge guy out of Duncanville, Texas. And I'm just going to assume everybody knows these guys have all made official visits to Ohio State. But he is looking still at Ohio State, Florida, Texas A&M. He is scheduled to make his announcement this weekend, Friday, July 11th. If I had to answer right now, and again, it's even 3 or 4 days out, there's still negotiations going on in these with these players up until the last minute. But if you had to ask me right now, I would take the field versus Ohio State for KJ Ford.
Deuce Gerald's.
Yeah, he is one of the top prospects in the state of Georgia, without a doubt, at least in my mind. I mean, I really like Deuce Gerald's a lot. He made his official visit to Ohio State last weekend, June 20th. He also has been to Michigan. He's been to Ole Miss. He's been to LSU, Oregon. You know, he's got all the visits in there for sure. With him, I think Ohio State is right there. Again, I was told after he made his official visit to Ohio State that the feeling was that from Ohio State's side of things, that Ohio State has a real shot at him, but that he would not necessarily be a kid that would announce real soon. And sure enough, that was on June 22nd, and now we're at July 8th, and he still hasn't announced. And for that matter, he hasn't announced an announcement date yet of when he's going to do this. So we may still be a little ways out, but Ohio State, I can tell you, felt that they were absolutely in the running when he left Ohio State on that official visit.
Duron Parks, offensive lineman, I believe.
Yep, out of Florida. He is a kid that I think, again, if Ohio State wants to go all in on him, that they would have a very realistic chance at getting him. Now, he is one that does have a date set to make his announcement, and that date is July 26th. So, again, we have some time there. And you've got to factor in, too, there's another young man on the offensive line that Ohio State has had in on an official visit that is going to make his decision before that being J.B. Shabazz from North Carolina. Again, he is making his announcement, Shabazz, the same day, this Friday, as KJ Ford is making his announcement. So I think let's see what happens with Shabazz first. Right now, with Shabazz, I probably would say that I would go with the field versus Ohio State. But that one, I don't know that I would say for sure on that one. He's got it down, Shabazz, that is, down to 3 schools. Ohio State is one of them. It's Ohio State as well as South Carolina for Shabazz. And I got to think of what the other school is right offhand for Shabazz. Ohio State, South Carolina, and give me a second.
Bill, it might not matter because our guy Brown's 330 says he's going to South
Tennessee.
Carolina.
Tennessee is the other one.
Like Tennessee loses out.
And by the way, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ohio State, all 3 felt like as of about a week ago, all 3 late last week, all 3 schools felt that they were very much in the running as far as Shabazz goes.
Must be a reasonable price. All right. Last one from the crowd. Savion Hyder.
Yeah, now that one I would definitely, right as things stand right now, I would definitely go with the field with versus Ohio State for that one. His 4 are Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Tennessee. I don't necessarily go with the feeling some out there are, well, he's going to Michigan for sure. I don't necessarily feel that. I just feel like with him, the overall package is going to be extremely important. Ohio State did go back and improve their package with Luke Waffle, only for USC to once again improve their package with Luke Waffle, and they end up getting the verbal commitment. With Hyder, that's going to be so heavily that it's really important on the package there, and I'm not sure Ohio State will go that all in for a running back when they've got 1 in the class and don't necessarily have to have 2 in the class. So we'll see. Again, with Hyder, he is not like with the case of Deuce Gerald's, he has not even said exactly when he is going to announce his decision yet.
I would like to get both of your comments on this. And Mark, I'm going to give you credit here. I did not think that guys would go off the beaten path for a commitment. And I did not give enough credence to cash getting to this point. We talked about Felix Ojo on this show for, I feel like, more than an entire cycle. Let me tell you the name of one school that never was once mentioned, Texas Tech. My guy's going to Texas Tech for $5.1 million, which I believe, Bill, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the biggest known figure for a college kid at this point. There may be someone who got more. I don't think it's been verified, and Lord knows this guy's how much of this is verified. But Mark, I'll give you credit. I didn't think guys would choose. Look, I'm not trying to be mean here, but there's no way to make an argument that Texas Tech is as good a football program as Ohio State. You can't do that if you're trying to not get struck by lightning. And I had no problem with him taking the money. God knows, $5.1 million. Now we're into like your leg could fall off and you're good money. Like, I know, the Gale Sayers blew his knee out and his career was over, and that's not the case anymore. You can tear your Achilles, come back and get $50 million in the NBA. So medical genius. However, $5.1 million, that's a ton. So, Bill, do you see, and Mark, I'll come to you after that because this was your thing, but Bill, do you see that as a trend or is this a one-off?
Boy, right now I would call it a one-off, but as things escalate moving forward, I can see it being a trend. The money out there, and I had someone tell me that I really trust that the money for defensive linemen this year has been out of sight. And this is a person that knows. As they put it, it's been crazy what high school defensive linemen are getting this year. And we saw that in the portal. Remember going back to the portal, we said that the money was just going off the charts for defensive linemen. So, I could see that becoming the norm with the offensive line. And before we get to Mark on that to chime in, I got to go back one thing. I see one person on the board says Shabazz to South Carolina, and I would not doubt that at all. But, we know South Carolina will ante up at times. So I wouldn't doubt at all that Shabazz could end up or may end up at South Carolina. But Tennessee is also in there as one of the schools. And like I said last week, I know they felt like they were right in there with him. And we all know that Tennessee can do that same thing. David Sanders is proof in the pudding for that. So we'll see what happens with Shabazz on Friday.
I wonder if South Carolina's not built themselves a little defensive end recruiting momentum, given the guys they've had there recently. They went in and got my guy out of D.C., who, as it turns out, we could have had before we really kind of adjusted things. Mark, your thoughts on being right? I know you hate that. You hate taking the victory lap over, but take it.
Well, and it's I'm right, but want me to compliment you guys. You're just not as pessimistic or skeptical or jaded or cynical as I am. And I think that I've been too close to the road for too long, where I talk to too many parents and too many players, and I see the gleam in their eye, with this money. I mean, this is the first generation that has had this look in their eye when you talk to them, where the rational tea leaves that Bill has been reading for 40 years are gone. And these offers come in the middle of the night. One day you like this school, the next day a school that has no business being in the picture. And we've seen this for 2.5 cycles now, maybe 3 cycles it's been, where, Dan's been saying, no, facilities, no, a pedigree to go to the NFL. And
I never said facilities.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
but you're right. My thing is NFL. I've been on the NFL train, but you're right.
The traditional things that would usually draw someone there. I mean, you've said that those things are gonna, still have some traction, and I know they do. I know you cannot walk through some of these buildings and not feel the traction of the past in there. But I just think that what we think of as life-changing money wasn't as much as other people. I think other people think $10,000 is life-changing money, or 50. Where we think, like you're saying, 5.1, you can lose your legs and you're still good for the rest of your life. You're going to have
$5.1 million is life-changing money. Okay.
Yeah.
If you have $5.1 million, you don't have to work anymore. Now you can't live like Bill, but you got to be $5 million. Come on, man. You go to college to get a job.
And I don't want to put anyone's personal business on the streets, but if you have a bunch of car payments left on a car that doesn't run and you're in debt and, the house and neighborhood you live in isn't the greatest and someone offers you 40 or 50,000 and you say to yourself, boy, the immediate problems in my life are gone tomorrow, that is life-changing. And if it was $100,000 or $50,000 that would pay off your credit cards, pay off your car, get you to a new place, that would be the moon to some people, and I don't like, saying there's different tiers of society, but different tiers of society look at life-changing money different and how they're going to change their family and the people around them. And that's what we're into now. And that is more important than if they have a nice, trophy room or if they got guys to the NFL in the past. And it's a shame that that's what it is, but my life is more important than those past lives. And maybe that perspective is, has more teeth to it than we thought. Or I'm just the most skeptical, cynical person out here. And I think everybody's just reaching for the money a little bit. And I hope that we can get this under control, that the rules come in here and there's a cap and there's guidelines. But like you're saying, the bag man's always going to exist. And there's always going to be people who want a little more. And there's always going to be players that are worth a little bit more. And boy, I didn't think we'd get to 5.1 million this fast and multi-year deals. I've said that a couple of years ago. I go, these 1-year deals are insane. There's no way the NFL would operate on all 1-year deals. And at the end of every year, it's a free for all. So someone got wise to that and said, hey, if we're going to give you this type of money, sign on the dotted line. You're going to be here for a while. You're not just going to take this and run on us. So we're seeing progression, but boy, I don't know if it's a good progression.
All right, Bill, I'm going to give you the last word here. Is Larry Johnson washed up? That is literally the number one topic that people are now, at least on Bucknuts, have chosen sides on. Christopher Sowers, anti-LJ, clearly. And I get it. But I also think we need to just be, and Mark would have an argument against this, but the results-based. I still think when it comes to recruiting, we're doing it right. I could be proven wrong, but Bill, your thoughts?
No, Larry Johnson has not washed up, in my opinion. And I see somebody posting on the board here, people, well, is he working? Is he getting after it? Is he traveling as hard as he should be? And as they mentioned, it's very true. Right after, not long after the national championship and all, he's flying out to California to check on what was then not as, really highly well-known guy by the name of Kerry Wilder, who ended up committing to Ohio State. That was in May, I believe. That it may not have been May. It was that Larry Johnson was out there and eventually got that commitment from him. And now Wilder's blowing up. He's probably going to continue to rise up the charts because of how he has done this spring at different activities, different events. So if you look at it again, if you look back, Bo Atkinson, I just continue to harp on that. That was a huge get for Larry Johnson. Defensive tackle wise, Larry Johnson, the last cycle and this cycle now, has recruited well. Defensive ends, he hasn't got the guys that everybody has hoped and wanted him to get, but he's still, again, getting Bo Atkinson and getting Wilder. That's two really good players there, really good players.
I said this a couple of weeks ago when we got on this case. We just torched Justin Fry. Just torched him every time Brandon Baker went to Tennessee or Jordan Seaton went somewhere, and just torched him and said, this guy can't. I think people think that because you don't get a recruit, your personality is foul, or you don't know how to talk to kids, or the conversations you're having are boring or something. Boy, I mean, and the travel, Dan. Larry Johnson has no choice where he's going. Mark Pantoni and that recruiting staff is looking for the best defensive lineman in the country. And wherever they are, that man is headed to go to visit those schools. They're going to set up those visits. They're going to attack the guys they want across the country. What do you think? He's sitting in the office with his feet up while everyone else is out on the road, just kind of life 360 and everybody, hey, he's over here. He's over here.
Life 360.
And I'm sitting here.
Someone's got teenagers. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, you're sitting here at the Ford kind of holding it down. This is message board nonsense. The guy's a great coach. He's great to talk to. The personality and all that stuff is there. The only thing I will say is sometimes younger coaches, the kids like a little more, but right now this isn't about liking people. We just touch on it. This is a money situation for a lot of these recruits. Not all the recruits at Ohio State, but maybe half the class. You're going to have to somehow financially make them feel at home. And that has nothing to do with any coach. Let's just not put Larry Johnson on their microscope, like any coach there. So that's my piece on that. Justin Fry is the case study. I mean, it's funny how throughout that season that teeter-totter just kind of evened out. All of a sudden, everyone loved Justin Fry and all the first-round picks and all the great things he's done with guys that aren't rated as highly. And if we talk about the EA ratings, when we get into the O-line, we'll see what Justin Fry kind of left behind here and how some of these ratings, EA doesn't really believe in our O-line either.
You can just tell, and we'll end the show here. This is like the longest show we've ever done, believe it or not. You can tell that this is a polarizing issue just by there's no gray area with Larry. People either think he's washed up, doesn't do anything, and then some people think he's the GOAT. I would encourage everyone to read the quotes of the guys who visit and talk about visiting, or KJ Ford. Go read KJ Ford's recent recruiting article and tell me how many defensive line coaches he mentions in the article. My guess is, and I don't know this would be the case, and this is my opinion, people who are that fired up against Larry have something specific that's bothering them. A certain recruit, maybe a relative that didn't get treated correctly, because I'm not sure you can get that fired up about it when and I know people I don't know why this is considered the past, but they just won the national championship and all four guys went to the NFL. By the way, Phil Steele's rankings, Ohio State defensive line, I believe 8th in the country with no returning starters. Is that good? Anyway, so I don't know. It's never good enough for some people. And my guess is that some people have an agenda, but I could be wrong. Christopher Sowers may just be an anti-guy. And I'm not trying to isolate you, Chris. Just happened to be the guy who grabbed the mantle today. And that's what this is for. Nutters are nutters. We don't ask for nutters and then expect you to be totally rational like my guy Buck. We know there's going to be some gray area. No gray area with these guys. We almost went to 50 minutes. That would have been a record, and it was certainly not our intention. But we got going, and it was good stuff. And it seems like people are still chatting, so we appreciate that. Whatever. Keep it locked in here to Bucknuts. We'll be back on Thursday with bells on. Have a good one. Neuters of Book.